back to Into the Veil. I'm Rachel. Great to have you here as always. And I would like to wish you all a happy Halloween. I'm going to take this off. So, today we are here to talk about this time of year. Halloween is known to be a time of ghouls, goblins, when the veil is the thinnest. I think it's important for all of us to be aware that it is a thin veil, and that a lot of times there are specific energies that have the opportunity to wreak havoc. So I would like to maybe share a couple of stories and talk about how these things can affect us, how they slip and slide. And this can be in our everyday world, even beyond this time of year, but currently would probably be the most opportunistic for them. And let me be clear in saying that not all energies are specifically malevolent, harmful, but with the veil being the thinnest, we might experience more bumps in the night, more creaks, more activity. Some houses, in our experience, are extremely active. And I've concluded that especially older homes, in the way that they're designed, in the way that the shape, the geometrics of the home can heavily influence activity. But not just that, the age of the home or the ground that it might reside on. All factors, prior activities. You know, if an individual or individuals resided there that were particularly difficult, maybe even violent, if they were not connected to that part of them that resides in the higher realms, a lot of times these are those that would become what we know to be earthbound. I have a jet flying over. I know for Ken and I, we had one house particularly that will always stand out in my mind. We've had several that have been active, but the one that stands out to me had an energy there that I would say was more malevolent in the way that it maneuvered, manipulated, tried to affect all of us. We had all 3 kids by then. Our youngest was 2. She's now 24, so it's been a minute ago. But some of these things you never forget. And the house was originally just a very colonial style rectangular place. And it had originally been built to act as a funeral parlor, if you will. Next door to the house there had been a livery, where there were horses, and they kept it close. But back then, often the dead were even transported by carriage. So, with that said, our experience in this house was that there were several energies, but one particularly, if you go up the stairs and it had a small landing and then it would go up again, often in going up these stairs you could smell that livery. You could smell horse manure basically, and hay, and it was fresh, super fresh. We had no horses. Sometimes coming down the stairs you could feel something behind you and really held on to the rail because it felt like it would push. If given an opportunity, it would push us down the stairs. And over a period of a number of months, we started noticing that, even our animals, we had a white bulldog at the time, and she literally would just hide under the bed in one room particularly. Sometimes you could hear a baby crying. The whole place was just busy. Then, over that same number of months, we started noticing our moods affected. We were getting angry about things we didn't get angry about. We were all actively working against each other, and that was not the way we were. And it took a little while to figure out, and I feel like it was one energy in particular, but it took a little while to figure out that through the course of a period of time, it would just, it had been enabled, even through our own words or actions, to gain some strength. It was not long after that that we moved into another place, and we decided to do a house blessing. And we found out about how to protect the home, how to set shards, as we call it. And we were really determined to do this after our experience in that home, because things were literally flying across the room in that first place. Well, it wasn't our first place, but in the place prior. And I remember being at a meeting for the softball team that my oldest was on, and the phone rang. And it was Ken saying, "I think you'd better get home." The cream pitcher just went flying across the kitchen. This is going on, that's going on. I said, "Okay, I'll be right there." And I got there, and our youngest was 2.5, and she had gotten up on a table by the bed and was pointing, and she could see the energy in this room, and she was just mortified. So fortunately we were able to get out of there. Did a lot of energy work in the meantime, because that was all we could do to feel like we were protecting ourselves. And got into the new place and did a house blessing. I had a small group over, and I had a friend of mine who was a pastor. She worked with me, and we anointed the doorways with olive oil and basically asked that anything of ill intent would be kept from entering the home. Well, at this point we're thinking spirits. And as it turned out, we had a couple of individuals that showed up at the housewarming. When they got to the front door, and nobody had been near those that had come were far from the front door. But when they showed up, they couldn't get in, and we couldn't open the door. And it dawned on us that the deadbolt was turned. Knowing these two the way that we did, it dawned on us that maybe that was something that was inclusive to actual individuals that we knew, and not just spirits of times past, perhaps. But the whole thing was surreal in that we realized that when we ask for these protections, they not only go into place, but they go into place in a big way. The door did not do anything else the rest of the day or thereafter. It was only when those two showed up, and they had a bit of a reputation for causing a little drama for some people. But being a part of the community in the way that we were, we had to kind of do the right thing and invite them. But we certainly didn't think that the protection that we'd asked for on the door would keep anybody out, physically keep anybody out. So that was an interesting experience, and we never had any difficulty in that place. It was old Native American ground, and I do think there were a lot of protective energies there. And I'm grateful for that, because after the place prior, we definitely needed an opportunity to heal. We've had a number of house cleansings that we've done. And normally we will start particularly with the white sage and work from the back of the house, and kind of consistently go through every closet, every nook, every cranny, until it gets to one door, one exit point. And then we will go through cleanse windows, cleanse and anoint doorways with lemon oil and olive oil. Olive oil is an amazing attribute in setting protection. I consider it a holy oil. Of course, you want the extra virgin, the real stuff, but it doesn't take a lot, and it works amazingly well. The positive energies respond incredibly to it and are more than happy to oblige. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is you can use, if you feel, whether it's this time of year or in general, if you feel like you have energies that just kind of come and go, and some will, we call it goofer dust, but you're going to take crushed brick and charcoal. Black powder is better with the brick. Sulfur, saltpeter, and in its proper balance, we've taken it and lined the outside of the house, the windows, the doors, any place that feels energetically like it may be an entrance to specific energies. The very first time we ever used that, we were kind of sensing that something was kind of coming and going. And Ken lined the doorways with it in that very afternoon, early evening. All of a sudden, there was no wind that day, which is why it struck us. But the screen door that had been latched on the front door just flew open and slammed. I mean, slammed shut. All we could conclude was whatever had been coming and going must have been using that door and was particularly perturbed when it found that it was not able to enter. At that time, it was affecting our eldest daughter the most, mostly later of an evening or when she'd sleep. You know, she wasn't resting. So some energies will mess with you more at night. Some will mess with you anytime they can. And there really isn't a specific time of day. Usually it'll be nighttime. But, you know, it's kind of interesting to experience some of these things more in the knowing than anything else, to realize how active and real they are in our lives at times. The other thing that I should mention about the first place that I feel is very important for this video, you know, we had 3 businesses running at once, and the 3 kids, and something that I have since noticed is that anytime we allow ourselves to get extra tired, maybe a little extra stressed, we are at our weakest. Many of us work very hard, and many of us are, you know, pushing through a lot of the changes that have happened in the last couple of years particularly. But especially if we're doing anything that brings us to levels of exhaustion where there's just, it's sort of a flat line of energy, if you will. I feel that puts us in a high-risk zone, if you will, for certain things to affect us. Because naturally we're very protected. Naturally our energetic field should be very strong and vibrant, and, you know, it's okay to go if it's after something you're passionate about and something you love. And, you know, we all have to do certain things that we don't necessarily always like to do. But if we can keep that in balance, that's very key, because when we, you know, the businesses, we enjoyed the businesses, but we just had taken on a little more, perhaps, with the birth of our 3rd child, and then we were maybe ready for. So I feel that because of all of this lining up together, it made us more susceptible to whatever was at that house, whatever. And it was mean. We're not mean people, but it was mean, and it was irritated, and it was just pushing every button that it could energetically, whether that was through emotions or thoughts or a lack of physical drive and energy. That wasn't us. So, you know, if you notice things about yourself that just aren't you, things that aren't normal to you, just consider whether you've allowed yourself to either be surrounded by perhaps negative people or an environment that's more negative to you. Excuse me. And take the opportunity to, refortify yourself. Find a way, and it may only be a few minutes a day where you're focusing on, alleviating that negative and kind of geared toward the positive. And it takes concerted effort. Very seldom is it going to happen without you insisting that it happens. The other thing, beyond the goofer dust, those are in more extreme, occasions. I've had a couple of situations where the direction was to take dead sea salt. Sea salt, like from the grocery, okay, it can work in a pinch, but it's been refined. If you're able to acquire even a small amount to have on hand, a pound or something, of dead sea salt, I found for myself that it works the best. And say if it's in your bedroom specifically, you would put a cup in each corner of your room and one under your bed, and then cross that with iron. It can be rebar, it can be tools, it can be old railroad ties, anything that's actually made of iron, and cross that over the cup that's under your bed. Most of the time, this will disable those nighttime energies from having access to you. You can also put it in 4 corners of your house and find a reasonably center point to do the same, and put a cup center point. It might be under, say, a coffee table or an ottoman or something that might not get moved, or as close to center as possible, and cross the iron there. The majority of the time it seems to be focused on night terrors or anything that's disturbing your sleep or trying to take advantage of that state of being that you're in when you're sleeping. And always feel free to reach out with questions or, leave a comment if it's easier, and ask your question. There are so many scenarios. There are so many different ways that these things would try to affect us, especially at this time of year. Remember that your true nature is peaceful. Your true nature is confident. Your true nature moves forward without fear, without anxiety, without distress. The natural state of your body is that of health. Okay? So when you start noticing your body particularly affected, it's trying to signal that something isn't right, that something's off. And it could be a new energy that's, maybe got a little bit of access right now, or it could be something that's been around for a little while. It's very connected to emotion and thought patterns, but all of these are affected through our energetic field. So if you have breaks or if you have weak spots in your natural energetic field, it can enable these to sort of seed and create that negativity, create that fear, create that anxiety, distress, anger, thoughts of violence. Normally it'll show up in ways that are not natural to who you are. So if you notice these things, that's when I would break out the big guns and begin the fight. Now, when you are strongly connected to Source, when you are strongly connected to that part of you, that divine spark, simple word alone will often banish these things. As an extra precaution, you can work with and through some of what I'm giving you. Gemstones. Semi-precious gemstones that are fairly easy to acquire. Amethyst is extremely protective. It's in the crystal family. It's a cousin to quartz, whether that's rose quartz or clear quartz. I like to accompany it with these, but rose quartz, it holds the vibration of love. Nothing negative can survive in those higher vibrations. Fine gems like pearls, diamonds, rubies, each one of them has attributes that enable and help with protection. Let's see what else. Actually took a few notes because there's so many different things that we can do. If you're able to acquire amber is exceptional. Amber is exceptional. Blue calcite, also very good. Selenite is good to keep next to your bed if you're having difficulty. Not only the Dead Sea salts and iron, but you can also use selenite to help with dream states. Each of these has its own gifts. Each of these have been given to us to utilize. Herbs. You can use dill. You can use parsley if you have an herb garden, and you can just hang them to dry and enable their natural essence, to help with what I call entry points, which very often can be over a door. Way back in Druidic days, they would use mistletoe, but it couldn't touch the ground, and they were specific about how it was cut. And I don't have any mistletoe growing close, so we use what we've got. I'm reminded we had the one of the businesses broken into at one point, and it was this time of year. And we had also learned about a couple of things. One, I call it setting shards, and they're basically pillars. Okay, now you can do this with your home, your business, your vehicle, but I start on my forward left, say at the corner of the property, and you're going to set a black pillar, and you're just visually seeing this. Set your black pillar, and then on the opposite corner set your white pillar. So for you it looks the opposite, but you're going to go left first and then right. Straight behind you, go to black again, and then white again. And just intend that anything that would cause damage or harm to you or your property would not be allowed on your property. So this works, again, with human beings, but it also works with energies. There was a point where we were learning about spirit animals, and we've always worked closely with nature, with animals, with anything pertaining to these things. And after we'd gotten broken into, Ken felt compelled to ask if there might be a spirit animal that would help protect the business. And I think part of it is that when things like that happen, you just, you have a sense of susceptibility that you feel to begin with, because it's a very invasive thing when it happens, number one. And number two, if we begin to feel subjected to or victimized, it also diminishes that natural confidence that we should have in the world. So it kind of helps with both of those things. And what he sensed or saw in his mind's eye was a big old bear with a big fat butt. And it felt like it was right over the front door of the business. And sometimes when you do this work, you think, we were much younger then to begin with, but you kind of brush it off and think it's just, maybe it's my imagination. It is until the next individual that gets to that door can't open it because it's basically jammed, or the facing is hitting so heavily against the door that the door doesn't have clearance to open. So more specifically, I think in asking that the spirit animal would come to protect the business, we had to specify in that case for anything that intended harm. If normal business couldn't ensue, that would be great. And it resolved the problem. So, I've seen big cats show up. I've seen a hawk show up. And each place has a natural animal that each person has totem animals that would easily work with them. Sometimes I've seen what I would call more mythological beings show up. Once I saw a griffin. Another time we saw a dragon. So I don't try to delineate what it's going to be. I just ask, and whatever initially comes to mind is what I understand to be the protector of that place. So, as I said, everybody has something different that they resonate with. And there are times in our lives where we feel like we need all of these things. At this time of year, we have even been in backyards, just standing and talking and just hearing things walking up in the leaves. So it's not inclusive to a home or a business. When the veil is thin, it can be anywhere. It can be anything. Now, granted, our experience with the people, perhaps they were around. Perhaps even then they were, present. I can't say at this moment, but I can say it was the first week of November, and it didn't have a right feeling about it. I've never gotten that from the people. So, be aware of where you are. It's fun to explore, especially for the young. But it's fun to explore the paranormal. It's fun to indulge in haunted houses at this time of year. Be cautious about what you invite. Um, be cautious about dabbling or messing with things you might not understand. Have a professional around or have someone around with that experience, because when we open those doors, sometimes they don't shut too readily. Everything can be handled, everything can be treated, but I wouldn't play with realms personally unless you absolutely know that it is a positive energy present. Just my personal opinion. I've never seen a good result from Ouija boards. I've never seen a good result from specifically trying to conjure specific energies. Very often they will lie to you. Very often they're very deceptive in the point that they will try to give you something or say that they'll promise you things. They won't give you anything but grief at the end of the day, because what they're trying to do is prove that you are unworthy of your natural divine connection. So just be aware and don't be afraid to ask those questions. Don't be afraid to ask for help, whether that's from me or somebody else or the Creator himself, because sometimes these things can get a little out of control. Okay? But that is the thought for the day. Make sure I haven't missed anything important. Like I said, there are a multitude of things that can be used for protection. These are just a very few that we have found work well. Oh, that's what I started to tell you. Cold spots, for some reason, was coming to my mind. If you encounter cold spots often, a lot of times I have not found cold to be negative. Okay? On the other hand, I have had encounters with negative energies that were truly more malevolent in nature and created heat. Like my whole body felt like it was on fire. So you can sometimes assess vibration or frequency with hot and cold. There can be places where dimensions cross or realms cross, and it can also give that sensation, particularly of cold, but it's not necessarily negative. Okay? Anyway, if you have questions, please do ask, and I'll be glad to try to help. In the meantime, if you're new and you like the subject matter, we explore all kinds of different things. Please like, share, and subscribe. I would love to see you again. For those of you that are returning, thank you so much. And I do hope to hear from you. In the meantime, have a very safe and blessed Halloween weekend. Bye-bye for now.